Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Crazy Talk, where we explore ideas from the fever swamps of the internet to question prevailing narratives with the goal of empowerment and liberation. Just a reminder, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, just sharing thoughts and information. So please, don't take my word for any of this stuff. As always, do your own research. Of all the wild conspiracies out there, Tartaria is far and away my favorite. It's beautiful and mysterious, although admittedly, there's a dark, sad edge to it all. Let's get right into it. The basic idea with Tartaria is that it was a great advanced worldwide civilization, lasting perhaps 1,000 years, up until fairly recently, sometime in the early 1800s. And this is a civilization that has been erased from our knowledge by false history. The evidence is all around us in the form of beautiful advanced architecture. It's in nearly every city, big and small, and actually all across the world. Once you begin really seeing these incredible buildings that we probably couldn't even build today, despite the use of trucks, cranes, power tools, cement factories, the idea that they were built by the horse and cart people becomes more and more absurd. My first exposure to this idea was a documentary called Ether, the Water That Connects Everything. This is a 2.5-hour documentary, and instead of verbal commentary, it has written, I guess you'd say, cue cards, pretty comprehensive. And there are a great many YouTubers dedicated to Tartaria and related matters. My favorite being John Levy, Jared Booster, Autodidact in Australia, Conspiracy RS. But there are many others. There's just countless hours of videos out there. And I'll be showing clips from these channels throughout this video with links in the description below. So the idea is that our history has been falsified. That's a huge part of the Tartarian conspiracy. Often there are great numbers of these gorgeous buildings in built-out cities that were supposedly just being founded. Often these buildings are attributed to insane asylums or high schools, city halls. It just makes no sense that pioneers would be able to craft such ornate buildings for these purposes. For example, San Francisco before the gold rush began in 1948 supposedly had a population of around 500 people. 2 years later, as the story goes, that population exploded up to 25,000 people. Wow. But really, that's still just a large town. Now here's a panoramic photograph from years later. Does this look like a brand new, hastily thrown together city for 25,000 people? How would it be possible for all of these buildings to have been built in just a few short years? Who mined the stone or got all the bricks together? Who cut and milled the trees? Who manufactured the windows, the roofing materials? And who put in the sewer system? It doesn't really add up, does it? If you really look close, some of these buildings don't look brand new at all. They may actually be quite old when this photo was taken, some even derelict, as though abandoned. And that's another part of the story. What happened to the original inhabitants? It seems like they just vanished and their cities were left deserted. In fact, there are amazing, super high-resolution photographs of many of the great cities of the time that show no people at all. It's rather eerie. Where did they all go? Were they killed? Did they somehow jump timelines or travel en masse to the outer realms beyond the ice wall? I certainly don't know. But some speculate that there was a reset around the 1840s, followed by repopulation of these abandoned cities. And where did the new folks come from? That's yet another mystery. So is there any evidence that this happened? Well, actually there are weird historical accounts of orphan trains and incubator babies. Very strange stuff. Okay, now, some call Tartarians the White Federation, because of the similar white cities that seem to be worldwide. Around the turn of the last century, all around the world, there were these huge expositions with grand buildings, supposedly temporary, made of wire and staff, which is essentially plaster and burlap. And these were then burned down accidentally or on purpose. These were temporary buildings that were destroyed. It's crazy. And so some of the most famous of these expositions were probably Chicago, St. Louis, San Francisco, Paris. But there were many of them all around the world. And the idea that these palaces were temporary throwaway structures is just ridiculous. One investigator I like, John Levy, suggests that these cities were being showed off to the new bewildered inheritors, almost like a cruel joke, before destroying them. And who was doing the showing off? That's a really good question. Another aspect of the story is that the Tartarians used free energy from the ether for power, heating, transportation, and most likely for a kind of healing that's been hidden from us, but can still be felt in some of the great cathedrals of Europe. And yes, places like Notre Dame are included in the idea of Tartaria. You'll see ornate rooftop devices for harnessing this energy that are often called antiquitech. And I'm going to try and cover more of this in part 2. In fact, I really need a part 2 because there's a whole lot more here, including something called mud floods, the possibility that our civil war, there are actually civil wars around the world destroying Tartarian structures, the possibility that giants were part of the mix in Tartaria, the difference between the grandeur of the different nations, star forts, dirigibles, transit systems, and the possibility of teleportation. Definitely a lot for part 2. But in part 1, we're going to focus more on the architecture. As I mentioned earlier, another crazy anomaly in the official narrative is the existence of massive palatial insane asylums. Here's a few from around the US and abroad. These were supposedly built back in the late 1800s or early 1900s when our populations were very small. Were there really that many crazy people? And why build these gorgeous, ornate, and expensive structures to house them? And if these aren't asylums, it's the high school or some such. Wow, these pioneer folks must have been extremely prosperous and had a lot of time on their hands. For the rest of this part 1 episode, I think I'll just show you some more incredible buildings from different ages of Tartaria and from all over the world. And so please do hit that like button and consider subscribing if you'd like to empower me to keep making these crazy talk videos. And as always, have a great rest of your day.
you.